Right now, while you are reading this, your phone is leaking you. Every single time you open an app, every time you scroll, every time a video buffers for half a second before an ad slams into your screen, somewhere a request is being sent out from your device, silently, invisibly, asking permission to load something onto your screen that you never asked for. And almost nobody knows there's a switch buried 3 menus deep in your Android settings that can shut most of that down. Not a third-party app, not a paid subscription, not root access, not a jailbreak, not some sketchy APK from a forum. A setting that has existed on your phone since 2018 and that Google itself put there quietly and never told you how powerful it actually is. Most people will die never touching it. You're not going to be one of them, because in the next few minutes, we are going to open that setting together. And once you see what it does, you will never look at your phone's settings app the same way again. Let's start with the part nobody explains properly. Before an ad ever appears on your screen, something else has to happen first. Your phone has to ask the internet a question. It has to ask, where is this? Where is Instagram's ad server? Where is that shady redirect link hiding inside the free game you downloaded last week? Where is the tracking script that's building a profile of everything you tap, everything you pause on, everything you almost bought but didn't? That question and answer system is called DNS, the domain name system. And it is, quite literally, the address book of the entire internet. When your phone wants to reach a website or an ad network, it doesn't ask for the website by name. It asks a DNS server to translate that name into a location, an IP address, so your device knows exactly where to send and receive data. This happens hundreds of times a day, silently, in the background. Every time you unlock your phone, here's where it gets uncomfortable. By default, that DNS lookup, every single one of them, is being handled by your mobile carrier or your Wi-Fi provider. Not by you, not by a company you trust, by whoever is providing your connection. And here is the part almost nobody stops to think about. That lookup happens in plain text, processed by your mobile carrier or Wi-Fi provider, in plain text. That means every app, every banner ad, every shady redirect on your phone gets a completely free, unfiltered pass straight through your network, every app. Every banner ad and every shady redirect gets a free pass through your network. Your carrier doesn't block ad domains. They don't care to. In fact, some networks use exactly this kind of visibility to build a picture of your browsing habits, because a detailed picture of what you look up is valuable, and it can be used to serve you more of what keeps you engaged, including more ads. Read that again. Every time your phone looks something up, it is doing so through a system that was never built with your privacy or your sanity in mind. And this is the mechanism, the actual technical mechanism, that lets ads exist on your phone at all. Not the apps themselves, not some evil design choice buried in your operating system. It's this quiet, invisible layer running underneath everything you do, translating names into locations thousands of times a day without a single filter standing in the way. So what changes that? What if there was a way to intercept that lookup, to insert something between your phone and the ad networks that simply refuses to hand over the address when it recognizes the destination is an ad server, a tracker, or malware? That is exactly what exists. And it has existed, hiding inside your phone since Android 9, codenamed Pi, released back in 2018. It's called Private DNS. Private DNS is a feature in modern Android versions, Android 9 Pi and newer, that routes all your network requests through a specific resolver of your choosing instead of whatever your carrier hands you by default. Think about what that means. Every Android phone made in the last several years, every Samsung Galaxy, every Google Pixel, every OnePlus, every Xiaomi, every Motorola, every Samsung Galaxy, Google Pixel, OnePlus, Xiaomi, and Motorola device already has this capability sitting inside it, switched off, waiting. But here's where it gets worse for the advertising industry, and better for you. This isn't some workaround. It isn't a loophole that Google is quietly trying to patch. It's a legitimate, native, built-in option, sitting in your system settings, that most people have simply never noticed because nobody tells them to look for it. Let's talk about what it actually does, because this is where the story stops being theoretical and starts being something you can use today. When you switch on private DNS and point it toward a filtering provider, your phone stops asking your carrier's DNS server for addresses. Instead, it sends an encrypted query using a protocol called DNS over TLS to a different resolver entirely, one specifically built to filter what it returns. When your phone asks, where is this ad domain? The resolver checks that domain against a massive, constantly updated block list. And here is the elegant part. If the domain is known to be serving ads, trackers, or malware, the resolver doesn't just refuse quietly. It sends back something called an NX domain response, a non-existent domain response. The resolver checks each domain query against its block list. If the domain is known to serve ads, trackers, or malware, The resolver returns next domain. As far as your phone is concerned, that address does not exist. It never did. There's nowhere to send the request. The ad, the tracker, the malicious redirect, it simply fails to load, silently. No error message, no lag, no crash. It just isn't there. Sit with that for a second. This is not chaos. This is not some blunt hammer that breaks apps and crashes browsers. This is precision. A scalpel, not a sledgehammer, quietly rerouting the invisible plumbing of your phone so that the parts designed to exploit your attention simply never get built in the first place. Now, the natural question, and this is where most explanations online completely fall apart, is where do you actually turn this on? Because the exact menu path changes depending on your phone's manufacturer, and that inconsistency is precisely why this setting has stayed hidden for so many people, even years after it was introduced. On a Google Pixel or a Motorola device, you go into Settings, then Network and Internet navigate to Network and Internet on Pixel, Motorola, and from there into the advanced options. On a Samsung Galaxy device, the path is different. You go into Settings, then Connections or Connections on Samsung devices, and from there you have to dig one level deeper into a section called More Connection Settings. Before private DNS even appears on your screen, tap Private DNS. It is often hidden under a More Connection Settings submenu. This is exactly why so many people scroll past it. It isn't sitting on the surface. It is deliberately tucked away, several taps deep, in a place casual users almost never explore. But once you find it, you'll see three options waiting for you. Off, automatic, and private DNS provider hostname, you'll see three options. Off, automatic, private DNS provider hostname. Off means your phone uses whatever your carrier gives it, unfiltered, unencrypted, exactly the setup that's been quietly exposing you this whole time. Automatic is a slight improvement, but it still leaves the choice of resolver largely out of your hands. The third option is the one that matters. Private DNS provider hostname. This is where you get to choose exactly which resolver handles your phone's lookups. This is where you take back control. This is where everything changes. Because once you tap that third option, a text field appears, and into that field you type a single hostname. Something like dns.adguard.com, select private DNS provider, hostname, and put dns.adguard.com. You tap save, and that's it. No installation, no download, no permissions to grant, no app cluttering your home screen, quietly draining your battery in the background. Just one line of text typed into a settings menu that has been sitting on your phone this entire time. Think about what that actually represents. For years, the assumption has been that blocking ads on Android requires rooting your device, voiding your warranty, installing complicated third-party firewall apps like AdGuard or Blockada, apps that themselves need deep permissions, run persistent background services, and sometimes cost a subscription fee to unlock their full filtering power. And all along, there's been a free native alternative sitting inside the operating system itself, requiring nothing more than typing a host name into a text box. Android has a built-in setting that blocks ads across every app, browser, and game on your phone, system-wide, without root access and without installing a single third-party app. This is not a small claim. Let that sink in for a moment. System-wide. Not just in one browser, not just on one app. Every app on your phone that makes a network request now has that request filtered through the same encrypted ad-blocking resolver. Your weather app, your free mobile game, your news app that used to bombard you with pop-ups between every article. All of it funneled through the same filter all at once from a single setting. And the moment you flip that switch, the difference is not subtle. It is instant. The effect is instantaneous. If you visit an ad-heavy website, you will notice the difference. The page loads faster, the clutter is gone, and tracking scripts are blocked. Pages that used to choke under the weight of banner ads and tracking scripts suddenly load noticeably faster, because your phone isn't wasting bandwidth and processing power, rendering content designed purely to interrupt you. The visual clutter disappears. The countdown timer video ads that force you to wait 5 seconds before you can close them, the ones burned into the memory of anyone who has ever played a free mobile game, start failing to load entirely because the domain they're calling is being answered with silence. But before you get too comfortable, here's the part almost nobody tells you, the part that separates a genuinely useful explanation from a lazy one. Private DNS is powerful, but it is not magic and it is not total. Read that again because it matters. There is a category of ads that this setting cannot touch, no matter which provider you choose. Private DNS cannot block ads served from the same domain as the content itself. Private DNS cannot block ads served from the same domain as the content. YouTube ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and sponsored posts will still appear. Think about why. YouTube serves its own ads from youtube.com's own servers, using the exact same domain that delivers the video you're trying to watch. If your DNS resolver blocked that domain outright, you wouldn't just lose the ad, You'd lose YouTube entirely. The same is true for Instagram's sponsored posts, Facebook's promoted content, and any platform sophisticated enough to serve advertising from its own first-party infrastructure rather than an external, easily identifiable ad network. This is the trade-off nobody wants to mention when they're trying to make the story sound bigger than it is. Private DNS is devastatingly effective against the vast, sprawling ecosystem of third-party advertising networks, trackers, and malicious redirects that infest free apps, mobile games, and ad-heavy websites. It is far less effective against the walled gardens, the giant platforms that have deliberately built their advertising directly into their own core infrastructure, precisely so that blocking one means blocking the other. So what does that leave you with? A tool that eliminates the overwhelming majority of intrusive third-party advertising and tracking across your entire device, but does not touch the advertising baked directly into the biggest platforms you use every day. Some sources claim this setting eliminates close to 90% of the ads infesting a typical Android phone. By switching to a private, open-source DNS, you can eliminate almost 90% of the ads infesting your Android smartphone. That number should be treated as a general impression rather than a guaranteed measurement. Your own results will depend heavily on which apps you use and how ad-heavy they are. But even as a rough estimate, it tells you something important about the scale of what's happening beneath the surface of your screen every single day. Now here's a question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. If this setting is this powerful and this easy to enable, why doesn't your phone just turn it on for you automatically? Why is it buried 3 menus deep, defaulting to off, instead of being one of the very first things you're asked to configure when you set up a new device? There's no single dramatic conspiracy behind that, but there is an uncomfortable structural reality worth sitting with. Android is built by Google. Google's business, at its core, is advertising. A significant share of the revenue that funds the development of the operating system you're holding in your hand comes from ads, the very ecosystem that a setting like private DNS quietly starves. Making a system-wide ad-crushing filter, the default configuration would be every DNS query your phone sends is now encrypted before it leaves your device. Android's implementation uses DNS over TLS, DOT, which encrypts your DNS queries. That means your carrier can no longer casually inspect which domains you're looking up in plain text. Combine that with a resolver that actively filters out known ad and tracker domains, and you've solved 2 problems simultaneously with a single setting. You've encrypted a layer of your traffic that used to be wide open, and you've cut off the supply line that feeds a huge share of the ads flooding your screen. And here is where the story gets a layer more interesting. Because private DNS isn't a single fixed thing. It's a doorway, and which resolver you choose behind that doorway changes exactly what you get. AdGuard DNS, one of the most widely used options, is free, open source. It's free, secure, and open source, and specifically built to filter ads and trackers across the board. There's also a family protection variant of the same service that adds filtering for adult content on top of the standard ad and tracker blocking. Useful if the phone in question belongs to a child, or if you simply want an extra layer of filtering active by default. Beyond AdGuard, there are other serious options in this space. Quad 9, built with a strong focus on blocking malicious and malware-serving domains. NextDNS, which offers a dashboard where you can actually watch, in real time, which domains are being blocked and build your own custom filtering rules. And Control D, which offers multiple specialized filtering profiles, depending on exactly what you want blocked. This matters, because it means the setting isn't one size fits all. You're not locked into a single provider's philosophy of what counts as an ad or a tracker. You can choose a resolver that leans harder into privacy, one that leans harder into malware protection, or one that gives you granular, dashboard-level control over every single domain your phone is allowed to reach. The switch itself takes 30 seconds. The provider you choose behind that switch is where the real customization happens. But let's slow down again, because there's something else buried in here that deserves your full attention, and it's the difference between what this setting is and what people online sometimes exaggerate it into being. Private DNS is not a VPN. It does not hide your IP address. It does not encrypt the rest of your internet traffic. Only the DNS lookups themselves. Private DNS only encrypts your DNS lookups and blocks bad domains. It does not hide your IP address or encrypt the rest of your traffic. For full anonymity, you still need a VPN. If your goal is complete anonymity online, hiding your location, masking your identity from every website you visit, private DNS alone will not get you there. What it will get you is a phone that blocks malware domains, blocks the overwhelming majority of third-party advertising and tracking, and does all of that using almost no additional battery drain. Because unlike a VPN, it isn't routing your entire traffic stream through an external server. It's only intercepting the lookup step. This is precisely why it's being called, by people who actually understand the trade-offs, The lightest, most battery-friendly option available for this kind of protection, for blocking malware, trackers, and ads system-wide. Private DNS is the lightest, battery-friendly option. You're not sacrificing your battery life for your privacy. You are not slowing your phone down. You are simply rerouting a single invisible step that happens constantly in the background and redirecting it towards something that works in your favor instead of against you. Now here's a moment where you should stop and actually verify this for yourself, because a claim this significant deserves proof, not blind trust. After you've enabled private DNS and entered your chosen provider's host name, open any browser on your phone and visit a domain that lets you check exactly what's happening under the hood. A site like dnscheck.tools. Look for a section labeled Resolvers. If everything has been configured correctly, you should see the name of the provider you chose. AdGuard, NextDNS, Quad9, whichever one you selected, instead of your mobile carrier's name. Look at the Resolvers section. You should see the name of your chosen provider. Control-D, NextDNS, etc. And a protocol column showing TLS, DOT, or HTTPS, DOH. If your ISP name still shows, the private DNS setting was not saved correctly. If your carrier's name is still showing up there, something didn't save correctly, and you'll need to go back into the settings and try again. This isn't a leap of faith. This is something you can watch happen in real time on your own device. Let's talk about what happens after that moment, because this is where the story stops being about a setting and starts being about what your phone actually feels like to use. People who have gone through this process describe something almost jarring in how immediate the difference feels. The full-screen ads that used to hijack your attention mid-scroll, the ones with countdown timers deliberately designed to force you to wait before you could close them, these are, overwhelmingly, served by third-party ad networks, exactly the kind of infrastructure that a filtering DNS resolver is built to intercept. One person, frustrated after years of dealing with exactly this kind of ad, and here's where the scale of this really becomes clear. This isn't some obscure trick circulating in a tiny niche corner of the internet. It has genuinely gone viral, spreading across social platforms, racking up hundreds of thousands of views as people share it with each other, stunned that something this effective was hiding in plain sight the entire time. This trick went viral on X with over 319,000 views because most people assume ad blocking on Android requires rooting the device or installing something like AdGuard or Blockada. It does not. But virality always brings a second wave of questions. And this is where you need to be careful, because not every piece of advice floating around about this setting is accurate or safe. There are DNS host names circulating in forums shared with disclaimers warning that the poster isn't responsible if your device ends up bricked or your alarm fails to go off. I'm not responsible for bricked devices, dead SD cards, thermonuclear war, or you getting fired because the alarm app failed. A joke, but one that carries a real warning underneath it. Not every DNS provider claiming to block ads is trustworthy, well-maintained, or transparent about what it's all actually doing with your queries. Sticking to well-established, widely audited providers, AdGuard, Quad9, NextDNS, Control-D, matters far more than chasing whichever obscure host name is trending in a random comment section this week. And here's a wrinkle that trips people up constantly, one worth addressing directly because it causes real confusion. If you're also using a VPN app on your phone, private DNS and that VPN can conflict with each other, sometimes silently, sometimes by breaking your internet connection entirely. In situations like this, you may need to disable the other app's VPN function for private DNS to work correctly. You may need to disable the other app's VPN function for private DNS to work correctly. If you ever find yourself staring at a phone that suddenly claims it has no internet connection at all after making this change, the fix is usually simple. Go back into the same settings menu and switch private DNS back to automatic or off-go back to settings, network of connections, private DNS. Change the setting from private DNS provider hostname back to automatic or off. Then troubleshoot from there. Nothing about this process is permanent or destructive. It is, at its core, a single toggle, fully reversible at any moment with zero risk to your device itself. Now step back for a second and look at the full shape of what we've actually uncovered here. A setting built directly into Android since 2018, sitting on every modern device from every major manufacturer, capable of encrypting your DNS traffic and silently strangling the supply line, feeding the vast majority of ads and trackers on your phone for free, with no app to install, no root required, and a setup process that takes about 30 seconds from start to finish. And yet, years after it was introduced, most people using Android every single day have never once opened the menu where it lives. Why does this keep happening? Why do the most powerful tools sitting inside our own devices remain the most invisible? Maybe it's because power, when it's free and built in, doesn't need marketing, and nobody profits from you finding it. Maybe it's because the entire architecture of the free app economy, the games, the utilities, the endless scroll of content, depends on you never looking behind the curtain at the plumbing making it all possible. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just that nobody ever told you to look. Either way, the setting is still there, right now, sitting 3 menus deep on your phone, exactly where it's always been. The only real question left is whether you're going to go find it, or whether, like millions of people before you, you're going to close this and forget it exists by tomorrow.